All right, folks, welcome back to another DeWiz webinar, part two of our Hit It Longer, Hit It Straighter, Hit It Closer series. Matt Lawrence alongside DeWiz co-founder Marcus Westerberg. And in our first part, we looked at how DeWiz can help golfers hit the ball longer, get more distance off the tee. And Marcus, today, we're going to help out that dreaded issue that a lot of golfers face, a lot of amateur golfers face, hooking the ball or slicing the ball off the tee. And, golf is a fun sport. It makes it a whole lot less fun when you're constantly in the woods looking for your ball after your tee shot. And that's what we're going to help out with today. And that's keeping the ball in play, hitting it straighter, which in turn is going to lead to better scores on the golf course.
Yes, and as we know that they say that 80+% of golfers have a slice problem. There is a minuscule who have a hook problem, but they suffer equally. And I know many who have battled their slice for a long, long time before the Wiz. And the way we work with the slice and hook problems with the Wiz is through the transition. And the transition measurement is comparing your start of the downswing to your backswing plane. So in the terms that we use on the golf course is coming over the top in the downswing. When you come over the top, you're likely to create a path at the ball, cutting across, making it slice. Or if you're falling too much down under, like we talked in the Henrik Stenson webinar, he was fighting. He didn't want to come this way because he starts pushing and hooking the ball. So as he uses the Wiz to stay on plane. But this is how we do it. And it's all related to the downswing, basically. If the downswing for a right-handed player is directed left, you are cutting across the ball and you're likely to slice it. And that's why we go into the Wiz transition and helping our users handle this.
I'm glad you mentioned Henrik Stenson. We talked with him, I believe it was back at the fall, at the end of last year. We talked with Henrik Stenson. And if there's somebody that you want to look at when we talk about transition to kind of get an understanding of what we're talking about, it's Henrik Stenson, because he has one of, if not the most on-plane transition swings that you'll see in the game of golf. And we talked with him about this back in the fall. But so when you're looking at the transition and how DeWiz kind of came about, we've kind of told the story in the past how, our other co-founder, Christian, he was on the tee of 18, sliced 2 out of bounds. And, the thought came to him like, we need something. I wish I knew when I was coming down on my downswing that I was doing something wrong. And so when you look at DeWiz, Marcus, how do you use that transition feature to get straighter shots and to help get that more on-plane transition?
Now, it's important to know about transition. It's a comparison. Again, it's a comparison between your backswing plane and the start of your downswing. So if you have a slice problem, I like to say that take 10 to 15 off your transition with a driver. Meaning that if your transition, the Wiz transition is plus 10 centimeters or 4 inches, take 10 to 15 centimeters off. That's 4 to 6 inches. Meaning you go down from plus 10 to on-plane transition or even minus 5. And that will completely direct your downswing differently, and you will impact the ball more from the inside to be able to hit it straighter or even draw it a little bit. And I've seen a lot of golfers do this through the Wiz and just using the learning stimuli, setting the limits. If I have a plus 10 transition, I start to try to get myself under plus 5. When I can do plus 5, I go to maybe plus 2 or 0 and just work myself down to a more inside path to the golf ball. And a good tip here is use your practice swing. Always make a practice swing and exaggerate. And then on the ball, you will not have the same Wiz transition number. You will probably be more positive than you were, but you keep working yourself down and then you're on the minus numbers and your slice will not be there anymore.
And I'm curious, I'm going to ask you this question. Maybe I'm going to get some free coaching tips for myself here. But when I'm using DeWiz and I go to the range, I generally am pretty consistent. My length of backswing from session to session is pretty consistent. My tempo is pretty consistent. But the one thing that generally I can tell is off is my transition, where one day I'll be, I generally I work in inches. I'm generally around a negative ½ inch is where I kind of live. But I will notice times where I'll go to the range the next time, and all of a sudden I'm positive inch and a half. And it seems to vary more in the transition value for me than the length of backswing or tempo. So from a coaching standpoint, and I'm sure you've seen that with a lot of players as well, why is it that kind of maintaining that consistent transition, what makes that so difficult?
Well, first of all of us as human beings and golfers, we have habits, and old habits die hard. So yours apparently is falling back to a bit of an over the top transition. So again, by you knowing your numbers here and being able to track them with the whiz and seeing, okay, I'm usually half an inch negative. That's where I want to be. That's where I hit the ball well. And when you see that creeping up to a positive, even over a 1 inch, then you know you need to take care of that. So that's one really valuable aspect of the whiz, keeping you from the feel versus real paradox, where you don't really know what is real, you only know what you feel. And now through the whiz, you will know, okay, I am trending upwards over the top. I need to handle that. So old habits die hard, and feel is not real.
And that's what we say all the time here with the Wiz, and we're putting measurements on something that in the past haven't been able to be measured. So, do you have any? You hit on it a little bit earlier, but any tips or any drills for players that are, they struggle with that over the top move, and how to get that lowered, how to get that more on plane? Any tips with the Wiz or any drills that you do with your students?
Yeah, so the thing to keep in mind is you're going to look at me from down the line here, and I'm making a backswing. Now, I'm swinging back, and before I transition down, if I want to get more of a minus number, negative number on the whiz, I swing back, move towards the heels before I swing down. That's a negative number. Back, towards the heel, down. What you do if you have an over-the-top problem, you go back, towards the toes, and down. This is tilting the whole downswing the way we want to. Towards the heel, tilts the downswing from the inside. Towards the toes, tilts the downswing from the outside. And that's a great thought to keep in mind. And it really, really works. And you get the feedback from the whiz immediately if you have done the right thing. If you want to go more negative and you transition, you go back towards the heels and then down, you will see your numbers change more negative.
And I'm also curious with, some of your more elite level players, your higher level players, do you notice a difference when you're working on a range session, you go to hit a draw, you go to hit a fade? Do you notice a difference in the transition numbers? Do you see that correlation or not so much?
There is a change between draws and fades, but some players are on the positive side all the time because, again, it's a comparison number between backswing and the start of the downswing. So you can be positive and hit draws, probably or definitely because you're coming more on the inside on the backswing, transitioning over the top, but still coming down on the inside. Whereas you see a Freddie Couples or someone who takes it outside and drops back on the inside, they're going to have a huge negative transition number. And maybe even when they hit a fade, they have a negative transition number. However, interestingly, the fade number is always more positive than the draw number.
And yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
It'd be slightly higher than your draw number. And then also curious when you go through a bag or a player's bag, is does their transition numbers, do they differ from hitting short irons, wedges compared to driver numbers and long irons? What kind of correlation do you see there?
Yes, they do. And I can go into a more detailed explanation. But first of all, the driver is more negative than the wedges. And the reason is that the ball position is changing. The wedge is more in the center, meaning you can catch it on the downswing more easily, and you don't have to tilt that downswing plane as much, the direction again of the downswing plane. Whereas the driver, you want to catch it on the upslope. But if you know the geometry of the golf swing, when you catch something going up, it's also going left. Left means out to in. So that's why the good players direct their downswing more to the right to be able to catch it on the upswing without cutting across it too much. I know it's a bit complex, but some of you guys out there appreciate this. So in general, keep your driver numbers more negative, 3 to 5 centimeters, 1 to 2 inches. than your shorter irons.
I think that's a great tip for people, and I think that gives people a better reference of, because one of the big things that we get asked all the time are, what should my numbers be, and I think that right there is a good kind of starting point for people who, maybe your driver is around a half inch or an inch positive. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's the thing that we're trying to hit home here is there isn't necessarily, you talked about an individual basis. There isn't a set standard of numbers that you should be looking for, but there are themes that we see in the numbers and in the data that we collect of our players.
I tell you what, when working with the West to hit it straighter, start with your ball flight. If it's straight, don't bother with the transition, straight-ish, a little draw, a little fade, then you're fine. If you have a ball curvature problem like a slice, look at your number and make that more negative. If you have a hook problem, look at that number and make it more positive. That's the easiest way to do it. First, look at the ball flight. Secondly, look at the number. Change that number and you will change the ball flight.
And as we always say, this is a great opportunity to remember, hit that middle button on the DeWiz after a shot. It'll favorite that swing. So you hit that straight ball flight, favorite it. Maybe the next one has a bit of a slice. You don't favorite it. Then you can go back afterwards, look at your data sheet, and then you get a better sense of, okay, these are my transition numbers when I'm getting that straight ball flight. These are my transition numbers when I'm having that hook or that slice problem. And you'll get a better sense of what your transition numbers should be.
Yes, I want to mention one last thing, and that is that if many slicers on the driving range, when they hit a straight pull, a shot that goes straight left for a right-hand player, they think that they have done a change to their golf swing. They haven't.
I hit it straight. I just wasn't aiming.
The direction is the same. The reason the ball goes straight is that the club face and the direction of the swing match up. That's when you get a straight shot, but it's straight to the left. That's the direction of your golf swing. If you get your club at a normal position, it's going to come slicing back. So you want to hit the ball straight towards your target, along your target line. Straight-ish is good enough.
Yeah, you always get that guy who just, pulls one straight left. I hit it straight that time. It just didn't come back. But no, that's
changing the golf swing.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. So so Marcus, I think this was very valuable. I think people are going to watch this and have a better sense of how to use that transition number, how that's going to help you hit the ball straighter. Anything else you want to leave the people with before we get out of here?
Just listen to the Wiz and tweak your transition, and you will tweak your ball flight.
Awesome. Well, once again, this is part 2 of our longer, straighter, and closer series. Coming up next week, we'll look at how DeWiz can help you hit the ball closer. We're going to be looking at our wedge game and how to dial in those distances from 150, 130 and in with your different wedges, and how you can use the Disc Wedges feature of the DeWiz app to help dial in those numbers and help hit the ball closer to the pin. Marcus, thanks as always for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Matt.